Soon we might start constructing loads of stuff on the moon. All because India's moon mission has recently detected sulfur near the moon's south pole. This chemical element can come in extremely handy for creating infrastructure on our satellite. It's the first time this chemical element has been discovered on Earth's natural satellite. This sought-after element is mostly found near Earth's volcanoes. Its appearance on the moon speaks volumes about the satellite's volcanic history and its past atmospheric conditions. The mission's rover detected this chemical element less than a week after touching down around 70 degrees from the moon's south pole on the 23rd of August, 2023. This historic landing on the lunar surface made India the fourth country to safely land a mission on the moon. It's also the first spacecraft to touch down so close to the south pole of our satellite. It's an area of strategic importance because it's believed to be home to deposits of water ice. If it turns out to be true, future missions might be able to harvest it and turn this water ice into drinking water or even rocket fuel. For 2 weeks, the lander carried out the data collection, mainly focused on the analysis of the moon's soil and its extremely thin atmosphere. Meanwhile, the solar-powered Pragyan rover started its quest to find frozen water on the moon. As for the lander, it demonstrated another amazing feat on the 3rd of September. The spacecraft fired up its engines and lifted itself for about 16 inches into the air. Then it made a tiny hop to land 12 to 16 inches away from its original position. It's kinda a big deal. Being able to get a lander back off the surface of the moon is essentially for future missions, showing that they can safely return soil samples or even astronauts back home after a lunar mission. In September, the Indian spacecraft was put into sleeping mode. The 14-day-long lunar night was approaching, and the spacecraft wasn't designed to collect scientific data during this period of time. So far, we've learned about a few major findings of the mission. One is related to measuring the temperature of the moon's topsoil at different depths. Intriguingly, the surface of the satellite in that region turned out to be hotter than expected. It was believed that the temperature could be between 68 and 86 degrees Fahrenheit on the surface, but it was around 158 degrees Fahrenheit, way hotter than it should be. The other discovery indicates the presence of several chemical elements, including oxygen. Besides, the data received from the spacecraft confirms the presence of aluminum, calcium, iron, titanium, silicon, and other chemical elements on the lunar surface close to the South Pole. The rover also used special instruments designed to measure quakes and rumbles beneath the lunar surface to detect some seismic activity. It brings us back to the sulfur detected thanks to the rover's spectroscope. Scientists are currently working on figuring out whether this element formed on the surface in a natural way or whether it's the result of volcanic activity or a meteor strike. Another astonishing thing found on the moon is a rock, and it may be the oldest known Earth rock. A 0.7-inch wide chip included in a large rock collection brought to our planet by Apollo astronauts might actually be a 4-billion-year-old fragment of Earth. This finding could help us paint a better picture of the intense pounding early Earth got at the dawn of its life. It could go like this. Soon after the rock formed, an asteroid impact might have blasted it from Earth. At that time, our planet's satellite was 3 times closer to Earth than it is today. The collision was so powerful that this chunk of terrestrial rock found its way to the moon. Later, this fragment got engulfed in a lunar breccia, a motley kind of rock. Eventually, the rock was brought back home to Earth by Apollo 14 astronauts. Even though scientists had found meteorites coming from Mars and the moon before, it was the first time a rock from the moon turned out to be a terrestrial meteorite. They also found out that the rock had formed in a water-rich environment at temperatures and pressures corresponding to those at around 12 miles beneath the surface of our planet. In 2019, China's Chang'e 4 mission made history by landing on the far side of the moon. The mission's rover helped researchers visualize structures hidden deep below the surface of the satellite, revealing billions of years of lunar history. The Yutu-2 rover made this discovery with the help of its lunar penetrating radar. It imaged deep into the moon's surface and listened to echoes of sound bouncing back off structures hidden from view under the surface of the moon. It turned out those structures were resting at depths of almost 1,000 feet. The research suggests that the first 130 feet under the surface are made up of layers of dust, soil, and rocks. The instruments also discovered a concealed crater that must have formed after a large object slammed into the moon's surface. Long, long ago, ancient lava was likely to be flowing deep underground. Researchers believe that the broken rocks around the formation might be debris produced by the impact. They also found that the volcanic rock layers were thinner the closer they were to the surface. Such a thickness variation of lava flows might mean a decrease in the number and magnitude of eruptions over time. So, lunar volcanic activity gradually dwindled since the moon's formation around 4.5 billion years ago. On the far side of the moon, there is one of the largest and oldest impact craters in our solar system, the South Pole Aitken Basin. Unfortunately, from Earth, you can only see its outer rim, which looks like a huge chain of mountains. It's a ginormous 8-mile deep dent, stretching for more than 1,500 miles in diameter and covering 1/4 of the moon's surface. Astronomers are sure that this crater appeared when an asteroid collided with the moon around 4 billion years ago. And now, look at this gigantic chunk of metal the size of 4 states of Connecticut. As for its weight in pounds, it's enough to say that the number contains 18 zeros. This mysterious mass is hidden about 180 miles under the moon's surface, somewhere in the middle of the South Pole Aitken Basin. It was discovered when GRAIL, which stands for NASA's Gravity Recovery and Interior Laboratory mission, gathered data about our natural satellite. When examining this information, scientists noticed that in one place on the moon's surface, there was a weird change in gravity. After researching this phenomenon, they concluded that something mysterious was weighing down the basin floor there. So far, researchers haven't figured out the origin of the bizarre lump, but there are several theories. One of them claims that the finding is a chunk of dense oxide, which appeared when the moon was just taking its shape. At that time, the satellite was still covered with ancient oceans of magma, and the lump could be formed at the final stages of its cooling. However, most scientists support another theory, according to which the puzzling mass is part of the giant asteroid that once created the South Pole Aitken Basin. Since the thing is metallic, it's probably the iron-nickel core of the asteroid. There might be a labyrinth of lava tubes on the moon. Not so long ago, astronomers received the results of underground topography and discovered a massive cave under the surface of Earth's satellite. It could be the result of the lunar volcanic activity that happened more than 3 billion years ago. Streams of lava hardened, creating a thick, hard crust on the outside. But inside, it kept flowing, melting the rock and creating tunnels and caves. Numerous small pits in the moon's surface discovered by NASA seem to be the openings to such lava tubes. If this theory is confirmed, the underground tunnels might serve not only as a convenient location for human-crewed space missions, but also as much-needed water sources for astronauts. You might think high-tech telescopes let us see every inch of the moon, but that's not true. At our satellite's south pole lie giant craters untouched by sunlight for eons, stuck in pitch black, colder than Pluto, and almost impossible to explore. However, maybe we have to if we want to explore space. Because the darkness hides some must-have resources that will make life and long-distance travel in space possible. Yes, we're talking about water locked up as tiny crystals in the lunar soil. Now, water in space is always good news. You've probably heard that scientists are also obsessed with finding it on Mars. If the red planet has any type of water below its surface, it raises the exciting possibility that life might have existed there. Even microbes would be the biggest discovery in human history. That's why rovers are poking around Martian craters and drilling into the soil like some very dedicated space gardeners. But as incredible as water on Mars would be, water on the Moon might be even more valuable to us in the short term. The reasons are simple: the distance and the gravity of the Moon. We can reach our satellite in 3 days. That's almost nothing. It takes at least 7 days to reach New York from London via a cruise ship. But more important than the length of the trip is the possibility of using the Moon as a pit stop. Stop, refuel, and relaunch so we can resume exploration. The gravity on the Moon is only 1/6 as strong as Earth's. That's not just useful for endlessly entertaining yourself by jumping around. This difference means that launching rockets from our satellite is much easier compared to launching them from Earth, which requires a tremendous amount of fuel just to break free from the atmosphere. For example, the Saturn V rocket, which took astronauts to the Moon during the Apollo missions, was made up of more than 90% fuel just to get off the ground. On the Moon, however, it's much easier to launch a rocket. That means that we could carry heavier loads with less fuel. It's like being able to take a bigger suitcase on your trip. If we can find and use ice on the Moon to create rocket fuel, it would turn our satellite into a practical and affordable stop for exploring the solar system. Not to mention that by applying some basic chemistry, we could extract oxygen from water and use it for breathing or rocket engines. Also, astronauts would need water to drink and grow crops on the lunar base. So, what do we know about the latest discoveries? For a long time, scientists thought the Moon was completely dry. But in 2009, NASA basically crashed a rocket into a crater. It caused an explosion of ice and vapor, like fireworks, and finally confirmed that the Moon had some kind of water. But how much? Well, enough to matter. The data suggests there could be hundreds of millions of tons of water ice locked up in the Moon's polar regions. Some estimates roughly say 1.3 trillion pounds. That's about the same weight as 460 million cars. Not exactly lakes, but still a lot. And there still could be more. This water could also contribute to uncovering cool scientific secrets. The ice is ancient, which makes it like a time capsule from the early days of the solar system. Studying those frozen molecules might tell us not only how water got to the Moon, but also how it appeared on Earth. Anyway, what's all that water doing on the Moon? How did it get there? Scientists assume that some of it probably hitched a ride on comets and asteroids billions of years ago. Many of those space rocks carried ice, and some of that water ended up in the polar regions. Another source could be the way solar wind interacts with the lunar surface. In any case, however this ice appeared on the Moon, the real trick is where it ended up, inside its polar craters. And while we can find the ice not only in the craters at the South Pole, that's where the largest, most stable reserves are believed to be. Some of those craters are enormous. One of the most famous is called the Shackleton crater, and it's over 13 miles wide and more than 2 miles deep. That's almost twice as deep as the Grand Canyon. The Moon barely tilts on its axis, only about 1 degree, so the sun never peaks over the rims of those deep polar pits. The temperatures dip to around -400 degrees Fahrenheit there. Any water or chemicals trapped in that frozen dirt just stay there, locked away like in a freezer. Something really cool is that at the South Pole, you have parts that are stuck in the perpetual darkness, but some nearby mountain ridges get almost non-stop sunlight. Scientists call them the peaks of eternal light. They are perfect for setting up solar panels, while still being close enough to access the icy treasures hidden below. The poles of the moon are the only places in our solar system we know of where perpetual day and night exist side by side. But the eternal night isn't just fascinating, it's dangerous. The terrain out there is absolutely unforgiving. We can't even simulate something like that on Earth. We don't even know what it looks like from the inside. It's worse than exploring the northernmost part of Antarctica while wearing a blindfold. So now that we know this, is that potential water even obtainable? That question is probably worth several trillions of dollars. Yes, there's water over there, but getting to it won't be like scooping ice cream from a bowl. What we're really talking about are microscopic ice crystals mixed into lunar dust. To make use of it, machines would need to dig and heat up the soil, then capture the vapor before it escapes back into space. And then there's freezing. Even assuming a human or rover could safely reach the bottom of a crater, it'd be almost impossible to navigate. Batteries and equipment probably wouldn't last, and it's impossible to use solar panels or electronics down there. They'd freeze in minutes. However, NASA's Lunar Reconnaissance Orbiter uses all kinds of radars and sensors to sniff out what the crater looks like inside. And now there's an even sharper tool, Shadow Cam. A camera so sensitive it can capture details in light 100 times dimmer than what our eyes can see. Basically, the ultimate night vision device. With it, we can finally map those pits without even setting foot there. That's why engineers are thinking up all sorts of clever solutions. Some concepts involve nuclear-powered rovers with headlights strong enough to carve through the dark. Others want robots that rappel down crater walls or hop across the floor like pogo sticks. There are even ideas for drills that could melt frozen soil and trap water vapor like condensation on a cold soda can. The silver lining is that this water isn't going anywhere. Until we improve our technology, the supply will wait for us. That being said, space agencies are already making advancements. In fact, more than half a dozen new missions are lined up over the next few years. NASA's Artemis program is getting ready to send astronauts back around the moon and then down to the South Pole. China's Chang'e 7 is planning to check out those dark craters. And private companies like Firefly and Blue Origin are gearing up to deliver equipment and experiments. Now, here's a bonus, lesser-known fun fact. The moon smells. When Apollo astronauts brought lunar dust into their landers, it mixed with the oxygen inside and ended up smelling pretty strong. They said it was like burnt gunpowder or fireworks. Lunar dust has nothing to do with gunpowder, but its particles are highly reactive. After sitting in space for billions of years, they reacted instantly with oxygen in the cabin, creating that smoky odor. Future explorers are definitely going to notice that smell too, since lunar dust tends to stick to everything. Let's hope that, aside from everything else, scientists will work out air fresheners for the moon base.
There's something happening inside the moon, something that nobody expected. Not a dramatic shift you'd see on the outside, but deep down, where things seem frozen in time, scientists have uncovered a hidden layer of what you could only call moon goo. Remember those school lessons about the crust, mantle, and core? Much like the Earth, the moon is made up of layers, a crust, mantle, and core. However, the moon's core is much smaller compared to ours. Earth's core is huge. It makes up about a third of our entire planet's mass. The moon's core makes up only about 1 to 2% of its mass, and its diameter is about 1/5 the diameter of the moon itself. It's surrounded by a hard, rocky mantle. But it turns out that between these two layers, that mysterious goo layer, and it's way more important than you might think. The layer is soft and partially molten, ebbing and flowing like the tides in our oceans. It rises and falls, stretching and shifting as if it were alive. Its movement isn't chaotic, but subtle and regular. We always knew that the moon influences our seas and oceans, causing tides with its gravity. But it turns out that we influence it back. The goo ocean reacts to the gravitational dance between Earth and the Sun. Also, the molten layer could be made of ilmenite, a very intriguing material. Ilmenite is rich in titanium, a strong and lightweight metal that we really love over here on Earth. Titanium is used in everything from airplane parts and spacecraft to medical devices, even in everyday items like bikes and laptops, all because it's incredibly strong and very resistant to corrosion and heat. So, if the moon might have a molten layer rich in ilmenite, that would be awesome. Astronomers are already planning for lunar bases, and if we had a material to build structures, spacecraft, or even tools for astronauts right there, that would be a game changer. Otherwise, we'd need to transport materials from Earth, which is extremely costly. This is our first tangible sign that the moon is not just a cold, boring rock. Instead, it's dynamic, living, and breathing, with moving forces beneath the surface. NASA used new special tools to discover this: the Gravity Recovery and Interior Laboratory and the Lunar Reconnaissance Orbiter. These are both space missions designed to study the moon, but they don't just look at the surface like a telescope. Instead, they help measure things we can't see with our eyes, like the moon's gravity and how it changes over time. Grail sent 2 small spacecraft around the moon named Ebb and Flow. Clever. The idea was for these spacecraft to fly close to each other and measure tiny differences in the moon's gravity as they go. It's like they were feeling the moon's invisible pull in different places. If the moon's gravity was stronger in one spot, the spacecraft moved closer together, and if it was weaker, they moved farther apart. This helps scientists understand what's going on inside the moon, even if they can't actually go there. And the spacecraft intentionally crashed into the moon in December 2012 to end the mission. The Lunar Reconnaissance Orbiter is a bit different. It takes super detailed pictures of the moon and collects other important information about its surface. By combining the information from both Grail and LRO, we were able to find this goo layer. But this discovery actually challenges everything we thought we knew about lunar geology. How did this molten layer get there? How long has it existed? And perhaps more fascinating, how it stayed warm for millions of years? That's some million-dollar questions. The moon's core generates heat just like ours. But it's not as easy as saying, oh, the core's heat probably keeps it warm and molten. Well, first, the moon's core is much smaller and less active than Earth's, meaning it produces significantly less heat. Plus, the moon is much cooler than Earth in general. With temperature dropping to minus 200 degrees Fahrenheit on the surface, how could this inner layer still stay in this flowing state? That's still a mystery. In any case, this goo could actually explain a lot of stuff about the moon. For example, astronomers were exploring moonquakes and how they happen. Now they think that it might be this semi-molten layer shifting and moving beneath the surface. Now, beyond the moon itself, it also tells us more about other celestial bodies. If the moon, something we considered basically a huge static rock, has such a dramatic life, what about other planets, moons, or asteroids? Could they also hide similar hidden movements beneath their surfaces? We can even understand our own planet better, learn more about how tides and similar stuff works. There are so many great discoveries we've been making on the moon. Recently, we found some awesome stuff beneath the surface, massive caves hidden for millions of years. For over 50 years, scientists have suspected that the moon's surface is full of underground tunnels and caves. These are known as lava tubes because they were formed by lava. Duh! Millions of years ago, the moon was pretty unstable. It underwent some volcanic activity, causing eruptions. When a volcano erupts, lava can flow across the surface. As the outer layer of the lava cools and hardens, it forms a solid roof of dark material. It's actually what these famous dark spots on the moon are. These are dark, hardened remains of ancient lava. But the hot, molten lava continues to flow through the center. Once the eruption ends and the lava drains away, what's left behind is an empty hollow tunnel, hence a lava tube. On Earth, we have lava tubes in places like Hawaii or Iceland, where volcanic activity has created similar underground tunnels. The same thing happened on the moon billions of years ago, although they're much crazier compared to ours. In fact, lunar lava tubes are now thought to be some of the largest and longest in the entire solar system. One such cave was discovered beneath the famous Mare Tranquillitatis. the place where Apollo 11 first landed, and it's at least 340 feet deep. Now, all these lava systems have remained hidden just beneath the surface, untouched for millions of years. Only now they finally managed to prove their existence. Scientists from the University of Trento in Italy found them using special radar technology and advanced computer methods. These techniques let you see underground by sending radar waves. The waves bounce back and give clues about what's hidden underneath. By analyzing the way these waves reflected back, the researchers could detect the shape and size of the hidden caves. Now, the best thing about this discovery is that we could build all our bases there. These caves protect from radiation, harsh winds, and meteoroids. NASA even found evidence that some of these caves stay at a steady 63 degrees Fahrenheit. That's some crazy coziness for the moon. And on top of that, there could even be some water there. So humans could take shelter inside these natural tunnels and build entire colonies on the moon. And I know what you're thinking. Could unexpected lunar monsters hide deep in those caves? Well, sure. There's a huge potential for exploring these caves and finding some awesome stuff. But even if we manage to find a miracle, like small life or microbial organisms, there's a 99% chance that there won't be actual animals or monsters. It would just be impossible for them to develop in such conditions. But it would make a great horror movie. Researchers want to send robots or drones to explore the tunnels first, and then see if they're safe enough for humans. And it's not just the US getting in on the action. China is also investigating the possibility of using these moon caves as a future base, showing that the race to explore and settle the moon is heating up.
There's a huge hole on Mars, more than 300 feet wide, and it seems that NASA agrees that it could be an opening into an underground world. Could a mysterious space civilization be hiding in there? Well, experts from NASA think that the hole might lead to a lower layer under the surface of the red planet. You can think of it like a trap door that opens into a basement. Scientists care a lot about holes like this because they might connect to big underground caves. These caves would be hidden from the surface and could be safer places for life to exist. You see, Mars' surface is a rough place. It's freezing cold, extremely dry, and constantly hit by radiation. Meanwhile, underground spaces are different. They're like natural shelters, protecting anything inside. That's what makes them some of the best places to look for signs of life on Mars. Interestingly, NASA is usually very careful when talking about life on other planets. Until now, most researchers have been focusing on tiny life forms like microbes, which might be hiding in frozen oceans on nearby planets and moons. But now, scientists really think this hole could lead to huge underground caves. If that's true, besides looking for signs of life, this spot could become a target for future astronauts, since the caves could turn into great shelters and even a Martian base. The photo with the hole isn't new. It was taken in 2017 by the Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter. In the image, we can see many holes scattered across the ground. The area basically looks like Swiss cheese. Most of the holes have dark, dusty ground under a thin layer of light-colored frozen carbon dioxide, aka dry ice. But one hole stands out from the rest. It's perfectly round, sits in the upper part of the image, and is about 328 feet wide. That's a massive opening. The hole also has a perfectly round crater around it. It's like something punched through the surface and left a ring behind. Scientists think it may have been caused by a meteor impact. Scientists believe Mars was much more like Earth billions of years ago, with better conditions for life. But today, the best chance of finding signs of life is underground. Mars no longer has a strong magnetic field or a thick atmosphere, so its surface is constantly blasted by harmful radiation from space. Underground caves or lava tubes act like natural bunkers, shielding anything inside from that radiation. This makes them the most promising places to search for life. Because of that protection, astronauts might one day find signs of past life there, or even fossils. To hunt for these hidden spaces, NASA brought in experts on underground structures and seismic activity from the US Geological Survey. In 2019, they released a detailed map showing more than 1,000 possible cave entrances scattered all over Mars. There's a catch though. All of this data comes from spacecraft flying about 250 miles above the Martian surface. From that height, scientists can spot holes, but they can't see how deep they go or what's underneath. Some may be true caves, while others could just be shallow dents in the rock. Other missions, including the European Space Agency's Mars Express, have also found signs of ancient lava tubes beneath Mars's long-extinct volcanoes. But what makes this newly released image stand out is that it clearly shows at least one hole that appears to lead into an unknown underground layer. And if current plans come true, the earliest human astronauts could see this massive opening with their own eyes in the 2030s. And maybe they'll also be able to examine another Martian mystery. For more than 50 years, scientists have been puzzled by about 2 million dark streaks spread across the surface of Mars. These black marks look like long stains or shadows running downhill. It's almost like someone spilled ink on the planet. They were first spotted in the 1970s, and for decades, no one could explain what caused them. These marks are called slope streaks. They appear on steep slopes, crater walls, and ridges all over Mars. From far away, they look flat and dark. At first, scientists thought the streaks were caused by melting ice. This could create muddy landslides similar to wet dirt sliding down a hill on Earth. Even today, researchers still believe the streaks come from landslides, but not the kind involving water. New research using data from NASA's Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter shows that most of these streaks are caused by dry landslides. Instead of mud or water, it's loose dust suddenly slipping downhill, more like dry sand pouring off a pile when it gets disturbed. This explains how the streaks can form in Mars's cold, dry environment. One famous example is on Apollinaris Mons. It's an extinct volcano south of Mars's equator. On one side of a ridge, hundreds of streaks run side by side, which makes the surface look like a barcode. These streaks appeared sometime between 2013 and 2017. Scientists figured out a bit later that a nearby meteoroid impact could have triggered them. The impact didn't hit the ridge directly, but the shock shook the ground, and it was enough to send dust downhill. Now, because some streaks appeared after impacts, many scientists thought that meteoroids or Marsquakes were responsible for creating most slope streaks. But a new study shows that this idea is kinda wrong. The study in question looked at about 2.1 million slope streaks. They were photographed by NASA's Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter over a long period, from 2006 to 2024. Scientists have estimated that Mars has around 1.6 million slope streaks in total. But some streaks have been counted more than once because they appear in different image sets. So, after analyzing all this data, researchers have concluded that almost all new streaks form because of wind and dust, not impacts or quakes. Look, seasons change on Mars and winds slowly move dust and sand. When that loose material suddenly slips downhill, it leaves behind a dark streak. It's like brushing dust off a surface and revealing a darker layer underneath. Meteoroid impacts and Marsquakes do create some streaks too, but only in very specific spots. Overall, they play a very small role. Less than 0.1% of new slope streaks are caused by impacts and Marsquakes. The analysis has also shown that slope streaks are not spread evenly across Mars. They're grouped into 5 main regions. In each of these areas, new streaks usually form during times of the year when winds are strongest. There's a key tipping point called the dust movement threshold. Once winds get strong enough to lift and move dust, the loose material on slopes becomes unstable. When that happens, dust can suddenly slide downhill, creating a dark streak. This is similar to how strong winds on Mars can kick up dust and form spinning columns called dust devils. They're like small tornadoes moving across the planet's flat plains. One reason this mystery took so long to solve is that these streaks form when scientists can't easily see them happen. The conditions that create new streaks usually occur around sunrise and sunset. And because this phenomenon happens in low light, no spacecraft has directly watched a streak form in real time. The study also calculated how often new streaks appear. On average, about 0.5 new streaks form each year for every existing streak. And since Mars has around 1.6 million slope streaks, that's roughly 80,000 new streaks forming every year. Most streaks seem to stick around for several decades before they slowly fade away. However, scientists don't yet have enough long-term data to be completely sure. Another cool discovery: even though slope streaks cover less than 0.1% of Mars's surface, they may be one of the biggest sources of dust in the Martian atmosphere. In other words, these small-looking features may play a much larger role than we expected. That's why understanding how slope streaks move dust around Mars is important. Mars's dust affects weather, visibility, and even how much sunlight reaches the ground. That matters a lot for future human colonies, which would need stable conditions to survive and operate safely.